Good morning. Happy Father's Day.
Morning.
Thank you, Pastor Laramie, again for an opportunity to preach. Thank you, Pastor Steve, for reading the passage, and thanks, Billy, for the donuts. That's awesome. All right, if you would turn with me in your Bibles to Psalm 52. Psalm 52, Psalm of David. We'll read all 9 verses. To the choir master, a maskil of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul, David has come to the house of Ahimelech. Why do you boast of evil, O mighty man? The steadfast love of God endures all the day. Your tongue plots destruction like a sharp razor, you worker of deceit. You love evil more than good, and lying more than speaking what is right. You love all words that devour, O deceitful tongue. But God will break you down forever. He will snatch and tear you from your tent. He will uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous shall see and fear, and shall laugh at him, saying, See the man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and sought refuge in his own destruction. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the steadfast love of God forever and ever. I will thank you forever because you have done it. I will wait for your name, for it is good in the presence of the godly. So today's message is titled Trusting in God. And here in the verses that we just read, David lays out for us a contrast between two types of people, the wicked and the righteous. And David emphasizes that the distinction between the two is found in where they place their trust. So following the pattern that David set in this psalm, I'm going to first look at the wicked man. So just in the context of this, to the choir master, a maskil of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul, David has come to the house of Ahimelech. Now, we rarely get specific references to people in the Psalms. And when we do, specifically talking about David, he usually refers to them as enemies or adversaries. And when we do get specific names, it's usually more well-known names like Saul or Absalom. And even in those Psalms, it's usually David asking for deliverance. But this psalm is unique because David is not specifically asking for help. He's specifically calling out Doeg and emphasizing his wickedness. So an interesting question is, who is Doeg? And what did he do to make himself so different from all the other wicked people in David's life? So a bit of background into my study of Doeg. When I was younger, in like 8th or 9th grade, I was in a class called The Kings of Israel. And what we covered was the life of Saul all the way to Israel's captivity in Babylon. And I had one of the best teachers in that class. His name was Mr. Smith. And I love Mr. Smith for a couple of different reasons. He loved the Bible. He knew his history, and he was a fantastic storyteller. So I was, just a few years ago, I was remembering this class, but something stuck out to me, and that was the name Doeg. And the only reason that stuck out to me because when Mr. Smith was teaching this lesson on Doeg and David, every time he said the name Doeg, he said it with such disgust and hatred that he had everyone else in the class say it with him. So he'd go, and then here we see, like in the introduction of the psalm, to the choir master, a maskil of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul. You'd have the entire class say it. So that stuck in my mind, but I could not remember why. So a couple of years ago, I just decided to do a character study on Doeg, and I found that there were only 5 references to Doeg in the Bible, one of them being in the psalm, but the other 4 were in 1 Samuel. So if you would go with me to 1 Samuel 21. 1 Samuel 21, just get some context for this. The context surrounding this chapter is David is fleeing from Saul after being protected by Saul's son Jonathan because Saul sought to kill David for the second time. So 1 Samuel 21, verses 1 through 10. Then David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, Why are you alone, and no one with you? And David said to Ahimelech the priest, The king has charged me with the matter, and said to me, Let no one know anything of the matter about which I send you, and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young man for such and such a place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever is here. And the priest answered David, I have no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have kept themselves from women. And David answered the priest, Truly women have been kept from us, as always, when I go on an expedition. The vessels of the young men are holy, even when it is ordinary journey. how much more today will their vessels be holy? So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the bread of the presence, which is removed before the Lord, to be replaced by the hot bread on the day that it is taken away. In verse 7, now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's herdsmen. Then David said to Ahimelech, then have you not a spear or a sword at hand? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou struck down in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take it, then take it, for there is none but that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it to me. And David rose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, the king of Gath. So just to summarize what we just read there, David is fleeing from Saul and he goes to Nob, which is a city of priests. And one of the more prominent priests there was a man named Ahimelech. So David came there and he told Ahimelech that he was on a mission from Saul, and he lied to him. Now there are two theories as to why David will lie to Ahimelech. One is that he didn't want Ahimelech to go and tell Saul where he was. And another is he was trying to keep Ahimelech as an unwitting accomplice in case Saul did find out that Ahimelech would not be in trouble because he didn't know any better. So David came to Nob. He tricked Ahimelech. Ahimelech gave him food. He gave him a weapon, and he inquired of the Lord for him. And in verse 7, we got a quick little glimpse at who Doeg was. We don't learn much about him, but we do learn a few things. One of them is that he is an Edomite. So he's not from Israel. And again, a theory of why an Edomite is a chief shepherd for the king of Israel is that because Israel and Edom were at war at the time, Saul most likely, during one of his expeditions, went to Edom and captured Doeg, and either through just his skill or some other devious trickery, Doeg was able to rise to chief herdsman of Saul. And so David fled, and Saul was unable to find David because him and his men kept moving around. But Saul was able to learn that more people were joining David. If we go to 1 Samuel 22, 6 through 11. Now Saul heard that David was discovered, and the men who were with him. Saul was sitting at Gibeah under the tamarisk tree, on the height with his spear in his hand. And all his servants were standing about him, and Saul said to his servants, who stood about him, hear now, people of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? That all of you have conspired against me? No one discloses to me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as at this day. At this point, Saul believes that everyone is turned against him. In chapters 19 and 20 of 1 Samuel, Saul's son, his daughter, and Samuel, the man who anointed Saul king, each of them protected David and hid David from Saul. And Saul is now beginning to lose trust in his own men. Then answered Doeg the Edomite, who stood by the servants of Saul, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So here, when everyone else either knew nothing or was unwilling to give Saul David's location, Doeg saw his opportunity to gain Saul's favor and become more than a foreign herdsman. Informing Saul of the whereabouts of David was not necessarily wicked, because Doeg was Saul's servant and David was the enemy of Saul. But Doeg did not simply inform Saul about David. He specifically names Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and also mentions that he had given him food, weaponry, and that he inquired of the Lord for him, but leaves out that David had lied to Ahimelech about being on a mission for Saul. So here we see the first mark of a wicked man. The wicked man creates destruction. Back to Psalm 52, verse 2. Your tongue plots destruction like a sharp razor, you worker of deceit. Doeg was now directing the wrath of Saul in the direction of Ahimelech for his own personal gain. Doeg's actions match the description that David gives of a wicked man in Psalm 64. Hide me from the secret plots of the wicked, from the throngs of the evildoers, who whet their tongues like swords, who aim bitter words like arrows, shooting from ambush at the blameless, shooting at him suddenly and without fear. It is clear that Doeg was willing to put down others in order to elevate himself. But is Doeg's selfishness enough for David to write about him as the embodiment of a wicked man? If we go back to verse 11 of 1 Samuel 22. Then the king sent to summon Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all of his father's house, the priests who were at Nob, and of all them came to the king. And Saul said, Hear now, son of Ahitub. And he answered, Here am I, my lord. And Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait, as at this day? Then Ahimelech answered the king, And who among all your servants is so faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law and captain over your bodyguard and honored in your house? Is today the first time that I have inquired of God for him? No. Let not the king impute anything to his servant or to all the house of my father, for your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little. And the king said, You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. And the king said to the guard who stood about him, Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand is also with David. And they knew that he fled and did not disclose it to me. But the servants of the king would not put out their hand to strike the priests of the Lord. So again, to summarize, once Saul had learned that David had gone to Nob and that he got some help there, he then calls everyone outside of the city, from outside of all their homes, all their protection that they had. And then he outnumbered them with all his soldiers. He accuses Ahimelech of helping David, of inquiring of the Lord for him, for giving him food and for giving him weapons, and basically calls him a traitor. It is here Ahimelech also explains how he did not know any of this, how David had lied to him. It was easy for David to lie to him because David would have been the most trusted man in all of the kingdom with Saul. But Saul was completely blinded to all that, and so he told all of his men to kill the entire city of priests. But all of them refused because they had the fear of the Lord. And so from this account, it seems that Saul is more deserving of Psalm 52 than Doeg. But it is immediately after this we see what David was referring to in Psalm 52, verses 1 through 4. So we see the second mark of a wicked man is that they love the evil that they cause. Saul had the inhabitants of Nob completely outmatched, but his men refused to murder the priests of the Lord, God of Israel. But Doeg, the Edomite, did not care about the God of Israel. Then the king said to Doeg, You turn and strike the priests. And Doeg the Edomite turned and struck down the priests, and he killed on that day 85 persons who wore the linen ephod. And Nob, the city of priests, he put to the sword, both man and woman, child and infant, ox, donkey, and sheep he put to the sword. Doeg, without hesitation, took the opportunity to gain favor in the eyes of Saul. He murdered every man, woman, child, and animal that inhabited Nob. This cannot be attributed to simply following the king's orders. Ahimelech made it clear to all that David had deceived him and that he was still loyal to the king. Doeg was not pressured, coerced, or threatened by Saul's men into murdering the people of Nob. Doeg relied on his own devious cunning. He trusted in his own might to protect himself from the world by gaining the prestige and wealth that came with having the favor of the king. We see the third mark of the wicked man in verses 7 of Psalm 52. See the man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and sought the refuge of his own destruction. Third mark of the wicked man is that the wicked man trusts in his own strength. This verse highlights the fact that Doeg did not trust in God, but instead trusted in his own wealth and the results of his evil deeds. The last part of verse 7, sought refuge in his own destruction, means that he sought refuge in the destruction that he caused for others that brought him wealth and favor with the king. But we see the end of someone who creates destruction, loves evil, and trusts in their own strength. In verse 5 through 7 of Psalm 52. But God will break you down forever. He will snatch and tear you from your tents. He will uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous shall see and fear and shall laugh at him, saying, see the man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and sought refuge in his own destruction. God's judgment of Doeg directly parallels the act of evil that Doeg committed against the people of Nob. He will snatch and tear you from your tent or dwelling place in the King James, like how the people of Nob were dragged outside of their city. He will uproot you from the land of the living, like how he personally murdered the entire city with his sword because Doeg chose to trust himself in his actions instead of placing his trust in God. God's judgment on Doeg will match his crimes. He will snatch and tear you from your tent. The house of the wicked that he built for himself, everything that he trusted in to keep him safe, his wealth, his prestige, all of these things will not protect him from God's judgment. He will uproot you from the land of the living. The end for Doeg is eternal death. The last part of God's judgment is that the reputation that Doeg was striving so hard to build is now broken down. See the man who would not make God his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and sought refuge in his own destruction. Doeg trusted in his own evil destruction instead of God, and here in verse 7, the very thing that he trusted in is now used as a mocking point from the righteous. The crux of Psalm 52 is the difference between the man that trusts in himself and a man that trusts in God. We see from the life of Doeg that the end of a person that trusts in himself is destruction. But we now transition to the life of David, the righteous man. Verses 8 and 9 of Psalm 52. But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I will trust in the steadfast love of God forever. I will thank you forever because you have done it. I will wait for your name, for it is good in the presence of the godly. In contrast to Doeg, who trusted in the protection of his own works, which is represented by David as a tent, something that is flimsy and foundationless, David here is imaged as a healthy olive tree. And so I did not know too much about olive trees, so I did a bit of research, and I found a quote here from Olive Grove, UK, some olive tree experts. Olive trees are equipped to handle drought, sub-zero temperatures, frost, and even fire. Olive trees are extraordinarily resilient. Their roots are so strong that they can regrow even when it seems that they have been totally decimated. This imagery is used in order to display just how secure David is in God. There is nothing that would be able to separate God from his relationship with David. And in response to that, David states that he trusts in the steadfast love of God. The first mark of a righteous man is that he trusts in the love of God. It is clear from another Psalm of David that he trusted in God in contrast to an unrighteous man. Psalm 20, verses 7 and 8. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand upright. We today are still able to trust in the love of God. As Christians, in the most direct way, we have experienced the love of God through the sending of a Son, which we have come to know through his word. John 15:13, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Romans 5:6 and 8, For while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. John 3:16, For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but shall have eternal life. To trust in the love of God means that we cannot rely on anything other than him for our salvation. We can trust in our own works as Doeg did. We cannot trust in our own works as Doeg did. We must be like David and understand that the love of God will never fail. Like a strong olive tree, we are rooted in the house of God, never to be removed. So the first mark of a righteous man is that he trusts in the love of God. The second mark of a righteous man is that he trusts in the faithfulness of God. There's nothing in this world that we can rely on. There's nothing that truly lasts. But we are not called to rely on anything of the world. We are instead called to rely on the everlasting and ever faithful God. David praises the faithfulness of God in Psalm 145, verses 13 through 21. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words, and kind in all his works. The Lord upholds all who are falling, and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open their hand, you satisfy the desire of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in all his ways, and kind in all his works. The Lord is near to all who call on him, in truth. He fulfills the desires of those who fear him. He also hears the cry and saves them. The Lord preserves all who love him, and all the wicked he will destroy. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. David reminds us of something that we should never forget, and that is God will never fail us. So we see that the righteous man trusts in the love of God. The righteous man trusts in the faithfulness of God. Third, the righteous man trusts in the strength of God. The destruction of Doeg came because he trusted in his own strength. David, in contrast, humbled himself and recognized that God is the only strength that is sufficient for our needs. God's love, his faithfulness, his strength have been felt by his people throughout history. In Isaiah 40:28 through 31, have you not known, have you not heard? The everlasting God, that the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him that has no might he increases strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young man shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. The end of the wicked man was death because he caused destruction. He loved evil and he trusted in his own strength. The end of the righteous man was life, not because of anything he did, but because he trusted in the love of God, the faithfulness of God, and the strength of God. So in closing, I would like to read Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by the streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. To someone who has not trusted in Christ for their salvation, it is clear from the life of Doeg that trusting in your own work will not save you. It is only by the grace of God and through the sacrifice of his Son that we can be saved. To Christians, we may not have a wicked king that is after us like Saul, but we do live in a world that loves evil more than good. We can try to gain favor with the world like Doeg, or we can be like David and entrust in the abundance of God's strength. Let's pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for your love, for your faithfulness, and for your strength that you give us. Pray that we would continue to trust you in all that we do. Pray that we would learn from both the example of Doeg and from David, that if we trust in our own strength, we will not get far. We will only find destruction. But if we trust in you like David, you give us hope, you give us strength. Pray throughout our entire lives we would come to depend on you. Pray for this church and for myself. Thank you for all that you have done, for sending your Son to save us. In your Son's name, amen.